Hey there, this is Krisha, and I'm back with another video on how to read research papers. This one is a general tips and tricks video, but before we get into this, remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel so you can get notifications about all of my future videos. Okay, so let's get into this then. So, in my previous videos, I've gone through analyzing a few very specific research papers, but how would you generalize those strategies to anything you want to read, really, or any research paper you want to read? So this is kind of my little overview of how I would do it. So the first thing is to read the title. And I know this kind of seems like stupidly obvious, but I don't mean just like skim over the title, like really take the time to read it. Because number one, this can tell you if you really want to continue reading the article or not, if it's like your interest or if you should pick something else. And it also gives you a very brief introduction to any really important terms that might be in the research paper that you can look into right away. So you're not going to be like confused when you're reading through the intro or the body. Also, this could give you maybe a little hint as to the difficulty of the paper as well, but you'd really get that more from the next sections. So after reading the title, you would go to the abstract and or the intro. So I kind of put these together because some people say you should read the abstract first, and some people say you should read the intro first and read the abstract last. So I'm just going to go over some of the pros and cons of both strategies and why you would maybe pick one over the other. Personally, I read the abstract first, and I feel like this gives you a pretty good idea as to the difficulty level of the paper. So if it's something that's like you just realize you're way in over your head, you can just drop it right there. And it also gives you a summary as to what's in the whole paper. So you understand what the research is going to be about. You understand a little bit maybe about like a little intro to the methodology and also to the conclusions. So it's literally just a summary of the entire thing. I like that at the beginning, personally, because, as I said, I know what I'm getting into right away. But an interesting point that people raise is that this also could make you perhaps a little bit susceptible to the author's bias, because you're reading their conclusions beforehand before you even really know what's going on in the research. So some people therefore recommend reading the intro first. And the intro gives you a summary basically to what the research is going to be about. But it doesn't really discuss methodology, it doesn't discuss conclusions. All of that is going to be later on in the body of the paper. So, yeah, these are kind of what I think are the pros and cons to each side, and then pick whichever one you want. Okay, now actually getting into the body of the paper, how do you read it? Because it can get pretty overwhelming. Sometimes there are walls of text, basically. But if you look at the diagrams, the tables, any images that are provided first, then it becomes a lot easier to break the body of the paper down. So basically, in any section in the body of the paper, if there is any kind of image, I always make sure to look at that first. Because, I mean, they always say a picture's worth 1,000 words, and in this case, it really is. Sometimes I'll be stuck in a sentence for like 3 minutes that I can't figure out what it's saying. And then I go to the diagrams, and at least the visual aspect for me makes it a lot easier to understand. It just makes sense. So definitely look at these first, and it will help you so much with understanding the actual text. But even then, it can be a little overwhelming sometimes in the body. So actually this is for both the body and the intro, always make sure to just think about one or two takeaways from that section and just quickly summarize some bullet points that if you remember nothing else from that section, you will remember these. And I like to just write these down real quick. I'll just have a notebook by me and then I'll just jot down like one or two points for each section. And this just kind of helps me keep track of the main ideas. So at a later section, maybe if I don't really know what's going on, I can take a look at my takeaways, and sometimes it'll help me understand what's happening later on just a little bit more. And also, writing these down for me, I mean, if you don't remember something about the research paper after you've read it, you can always just go to these takeaways, and it's very succinct there. It's very easy to decipher, and it's there for you whenever you need it, basically. So always summarize the points. And yeah, look at the diagrams and tables, look at the main points in each section. These are my two main tricks, really, to understand the body of the paper. And then from there, you move to the conclusion and or discussion section. So, as is quite obvious from this title, this section basically provides a conclusion to what happened in the research paper, what were the results, perhaps what is the impact of these results, what further research is needed, why the conclusions of this particular paper may be strong or not so strong. All of this will be covered in the conclusion and discussion section. And honestly, this part isn't too hard to understand because, I mean, you've made it through the entire paper. And so this kind of just provides a summary to that. And there's nothing really new that's introduced in the conclusion and discussion normally. So overall, this section is pretty easy to understand, but the same tips from before apply. Definitely make sure you take one or two summary bullet points from this section. Again, if there is anything particularly important here, make sure that's one of your takeaways. But overall, this thing will summarize the entire article, the entire scientific paper. And then most people might think they're done after reading the conclusion and discussion, but you're not. There is actually one more thing you should do. Take a look at the references. So, I know this can be a little dry. They're usually just like a list of articles that were referenced throughout the paper or that the researcher borrowed knowledge from to write his or her own paper. But this section is super useful if you're really looking to go deep into a topic. Since they are related to the article you just read, it provides extra info on the same topic and allows you to build off of what you already know. In addition to that, if you had any questions when reading this paper, maybe something you find in the references section might be able to clear it up. And references, depending on the type of article you're reading, I focus more on scientific papers, but I mean, there are a variety of different styles, like there's APA, MLA, Chicago, whether you're reading like scientific papers, history papers, it depends. But although the formats would be different, essentially you will be able to find a link to other articles that are similar to the same topic you were just reading about. So yeah, this is super useful to expand your knowledge in the topic and make sure you aren't just limited to the one article you read. And of course, throughout the articles as well, feel free to just look up anything that you have questions about. Google has tons of resources. You will find so many reliable websites pop up. There have been a ton of times where I just looked up a term, even that I didn't know in a particular paper, And I got like 10 other articles that were also helping to describe, maybe it was a protein, and they talked about like different functions of this protein, different, maybe its structure, and it just helped me get a much more holistic understanding of every paper that I was reading and of the topic itself. So yeah, using these tips and tricks should get you started on your way to understanding uh, any research paper you want to read. Hopefully you found this helpful, and as I said before, please like this video and subscribe to my channel, and hope to see you in the next video.